to Yugishvara 54. With the end of the Battle of Britain, the RAF had gained air superiority over the Luftwaffe and the Messerschmitt 109s. But this was Kurt Tank's design, not designed to replace the 109, but basically to support it. Fitted with a BMW 801 radial engine. When the aircraft was introduced, it basically scared the hell out of the RAF, and they lost many aircraft. They did not know what this was. At first they thought it was some of the radial engine Mohawk fighters that the Germans had taken over. There were over 20,000 Focke Wulf 190s produced. We'll never know how many, because aircraft that have been shot down were then taken back to factories, whether they be the main factories or shadow factories, and they were rebuilt and reintroduced into service. There were all sorts of different models, many of them fitted with the BMW radial engine. They could carry two 13mm machine guns, four 20mm cannons. Some of them were fitted with a V12 inline engine, but it still looked like a radial because it had an annular radiator. That was the D model, the Dora 9.
Yeah, what I want to know, Ando, is where's our support? We're here getting pasted down here by this guy, and there's no one to protect us.
They'll be along. Never fear.
So long as they're not the Tomorrow Hawks.
Yeah.
Or the Never Hawks.
The Never Hawks. This particular machine is actually a full-size replica.
And here they are, a couple of Spitfires in to save the day and drive off the butcher bird.
The 190 was an incredible aircraft. The British test pilot, Eric Brown, said that it had a rate of roll that would actually tear the wings off a Spitfire.
Well, hopefully we don't see that today, and it looks like the Spitfires are going into a tail chase to see if they can run them down. I do remember Chris saying he could probably outrun them.
This Focke Wulf was built by Focke and imported into Australia. Guns.
Yeah, been a cry of guns. I think it sounded like Bag's got a good angle on him, deflector shot. Another call of guns over the display frequency.
And I think he's going to have another go at blowing something up. Yep, correct hit.
You can see the guys were definitely trying to shorten the radius of their turn and get their nose round on them. A little bit of a challenge was thrown down, I believe, between the three pilots. They have certainly closed up the gap, haven't they, Ando?
Most definitely, but Mr. Dortmund, if he was flying it, is a very cunning adversary. 39 total victories, most over fighters, and one B-17 bomber, but the rest were all fighters.
Focke Wulf 190, followed by, I believe, the Mark 5, then the Mark 9 Spitfires.
You can tell the difference between the two because the Mark 8's got the big shark mouth. Dortmund was a very, very highly skilled pilot. He got his first victory in February 1944. And although he had 39 total victories, that is very low by total Luftwaffe standards. I think one of the highest scoring aces there had 352 confirmed victories.
Thanks for the correction, Ando, there. I missed three little numbers, calling it a Mark 5 instead of 8.
Well, it's a Mark 13 in the program, so you're not doing too bad.
I split the difference, right? Went either side. It's a beautiful sound.
It's incredible to think that we're actually watching this and seeing these warbirds, because up until the mid-1970s we were not allowed to fly these aircraft. Although the two Spitfires are original, the Focke Wulf is a full-sized replica. It's being powered by a Chinese license-built Russian radial engine that's almost a copy of the BMW German engine.
So it's close enough, but I believe there's about 5 or 10% of an original aircraft in there somewhere.
Yeah, the tail wheel is definitely Focke Wulf. They managed to find a whole bunch of those and incorporated those into the replicas. If you have a look at the prop on that Focke Wulf, it is huge. Chews up a lot of air.
Yeah, looks like the Focke Wulf has waggled his wings. I think he's giving up there.
Well, he might be like Mr. Arnhem Faber, who was flying a Focke Wulf over UK. Thought the Bristol Channel was the English Channel, and he landed in Wales and gifted them an aircraft that they studied very, very closely and tested a lot. And in fact, the design of the engine cowling and the exhaust runs for the Hawker Fury and the Hawker Sea Fury were based on the design of the cooling system in the Focke Wulf 190.
Serious engineering and aerodynamics, clearly. Chris has called it. He's taken his authentic battle damage and is now bringing his aircraft back in before the Spitfires do more damage to him. Looks like a victory pass from the Spitfires. Showing off that beautiful elliptical wing.
If you have a look at the Focke Wulf 190, you can see how huge that undercarriage is. You can see it from here, the main gear legs. It stands very, very high off the ground. That was one of the reasons it was a very good aircraft, because it could travel over muddy ground and very rough ground, whereas the 109, the gear, and the same with the Spitfire, the gear was very close together.
Yep.
So it was subject to problems on rough ground. That's why the Focke Wulf did so well in Russia.
Like the Mustang, very wide stance.
You can see that beautiful elliptical wing shape on the Spitfire. First flew in March 1936. Designed by Reginald Mitchell, who had gained his experience in high performance aircraft design with the Snyder Cup float plane series. He designed the aircraft that eventually won the trophy for the British. You didn't win a race and then get the trophy. You actually had to win it 3 times, 3 separate occasions. And of course the Italians and the Americans were vying for the trophy. Very, very prestigious. From those aircraft we got the Spitfire, and we also had a V12 engine that eventually morphed into the Rolls-Royce Griffon. But it was the Rolls-Royce Merlin fitted to these aircraft and also to the Hurricanes that the RAF put to great advantage in the Battle of Britain.
And now splitting up Apparently they're going to do a couple of separate displays, I'm told.
Yep, I think the Mark 8 might come back in, do a couple of turns, and then let Paul do his full display in the Mark 9.
And absolutely beautiful aircraft, but many people consider that the Spitfire was the hero of the Battle of Britain, but it was actually the Hurricane that did most of the work, the Spitfire being more the poster child.
And it certainly gained the accolades through Winston Churchill. Ladies and gentlemen, when Chris pulls up, give him a big round of applause down there. There was only one of these aircraft in Australia, and only a few of them flying in the world. The spiral spinner on the Focke Wulf was not a decoration, it was actually a marking to identify German aircraft, because in a melee over Europe with all of the bombers and the hundreds of fighters that would have been operational, it would have been very easy to shoot at your own aircraft. So the so-called Spiralschnalls, easy for somebody to say but not me, actually gave you identification of the aircraft head on.
Well, it was working pretty well for me. I was mesmerised by it. Thank you for breaking me out of that hypnosis there.
Coming in from your right, you have the Mark 9 Spitfire. They look almost identical, but you can identify the Mark 9 by the fixed tail wheel.
They didn't need to ferret over in this one.
Some of you may have noticed the red, white and blue band on the spinner. This particular aircraft actually flew as part of the RAF, but it was flown by a Norwegian squadron, and that red, white and blue represents the colours of the Norwegian flag. This aircraft was actually flown by one of their aces at a couple of occasions, and it saw operational service during the Second World War over Europe.
Now, Ando, you mentioned about the Focke Wulfs when they were shot down being retrieved, taken to a factory and rebuilt. The Spitfires weren't just built at the Supermarine factory, were they? They were all over the place.
Oh, built everywhere. When the Supermarine factory was bombed early in the war, they actually dispersed production, and there were people who were manufacturing bits and pieces of Spitfires in their front lounge rooms. The dispersal system worked really well. There were a lot of factories around the place, particularly out towards Salisbury, where they manufactured the bits and pieces, assembled them in a coach factory, and took them out to a field called High Post near Old Sarum.
Was that Castle Bromwich, the coach factory?
No, Castle Bromwich was the Morris Works. It was a huge works up in the north.
Because that did about 12,000.
Yeah. This aircraft, flown by Paul Bennett, as we mentioned earlier on. This machine has come down from the collection of Ross Pay up at Scone. It was Ross's dad, Cole, who actually put together the first Spitfire to fly in Australia since the Second World War. And that aircraft was the Mark 8 that you saw displaying with this particular machine.
So a bit of heritage here from the Pays.
A huge connection with the Pays. We've always had a great connection with warbirds, and we haven't actually mentioned what a warbird is, but we did call a warbird out many times. It's any ex-military aircraft that is currently flying in civilian hands. Now that aircraft there, the Mark 8 Spitfire that you can see taxiing in, is painted in the markings of Wing Commander Bobby Gibbs, DSO DFC. He's an Australian pilot. He was flying P-40s, Tomahawks and then Kitty Hawks in the Western Desert, and then came back to Australia as the wing leader of 81 Wing, the Spitfire wing that had the 3 squadrons. This aircraft, that particular aircraft, is just wearing his markings, but the particular aircraft that you see taxiing there was the very last Spitfire to ever be allocated an RAAF serial number.
Didn't Bobby wind up signing the aircraft cowl, or was that the Kitty Hawk?
That's the Kitty Hawk.
Gotcha. Which is also here on the flight line.
$20,500 Spitfires were produced, and about another 2,300 Seafires, the naval version. The Spitfires and Seafires had both Rolls-Royce Merlin and Rolls-Royce Griffin engines. And very interesting to find out that and understand why the Griffin and the Merlin, both produced by Rolls-Royce, rotate in opposite directions. Never been able to figure that out.
Keep them on their toes.
The Griffin engine, 35 litres swept volume, the Merlin 27.
Yeah!
The Spitfire with the shark mouth on it, part of 457 squadron that was part of that 81 wing.
Ando, just one sec. I've got a civil service announcement. We've got a lost adult. Freya has lost her dad, Ryan. Freya's age 9. She's at the information tent and she's lost her adult. So folks, if you see an adult named Ryan, a dad, and he's looking all lost and wandering, just grab his hand and point him out to the information box. Not far here from the commentary area, just pretty much on the corner. It's got a bit of an orange windsock on it, big long white tent just near there. And come on down and find Freya there waiting for you, but not so patiently, for the lost dad.
I think that might cost a milkshake.
Yeah, well, as a dad, I've been lost a number of times, but fortunately I was never called out for it. The fun part is when we start doing the announcements about people's cars that are blocking routes. That's when we give you about 10 minutes, or we're going to get one of the helicopters to pick up your car and take it away. And we've actually seen video of that, but so far we've been pretty lucky at this show.
I said the Mark 8 Spitfire is part of that 100 squadron collection. That aircraft is based at Temora. It was one of 13 aircraft based there, part of the collection for the Temora Aviation Museum that was founded by David Lowy. There were 2 Spitfires in that collection.
And folks, just a reminder, you can come on down to close here to the commentary and Unicom Tower, where the big white tent with roulettes on it and the roundels and so on. The roulettes are still signing their autographs and so on. And it's been almost an hour and I'm still looking at a line. Big wave at everyone waiting to get their signatures. It's worth the wait, gang. I've got a bit of their merch, but I cheated. I just went over and chatted to them well after the show. But worth the wait, and go down and say hi to the gang. But a big wave here for Paul Bennett, bringing in the Spitfire Mark 9.
Now the T-28 Trojan. This is flown today by Tim Dugan.
I do love that sound.
Again, it's the same engine that's in the Tracker, or the Tracker has the same engines that fitted in the T-28. The R1820, 1425 horsepower in 9 cylinders. and 1,820 cubic inches. So each one of those cylinders has got more capacity than my engine in the car.
Yeah. Like you said, a Harley in the air.
T28 first flew in September 1949, and it was designed to replace the North American Aviation T6, or what we saw earlier on as the Harvard, and we're supposed to. They originally had a very large tailwheel aircraft with the 1820 in it. That didn't cut the mustard, so they redesigned